And if you look at the three players, if you look at the government, you look at the industry, you look at civil society, and what all of them have been trying, but it's not that none of them have been doing anything, all of them have been doing a lot and have in fact accomplished quite a bit. But in their own way, within the limits that they were capable of. And that has taken us a part of the way. But by and large, they operated on their own, not as a team and not working together. That was the nature of the game at that time. What has changed this quite a lot is the advent of technology and the changes which have been wrought by technology, which have enabled people to be connected like never before, and which have enabled collaboration to such a point that people who don't collaborate perhaps can no longer compete, can no longer make the kind of innovations or the kind of progress which is possible. If you look at the government, what did they do well? Government is good at scale. If you look at any program, be it NREGA, be it education, be it health, the numbers are absolutely mind-boggling. There are probably no other country barring China which really has to deal with those kind of numbers. Substantial amount of money also has been put into these programs. So it's not that the attempt was not made on the scale which is required. It's not that money was not put into it. To the micro detail at the grassroots level. And particularly so considering the fact that it's a very large and complex country and there are so many variations. And I heard a lot about replicating innovation and replicating success, but I will share also some perspectives on the challenges even in replicating a so-called success. So this is, these are the strengths as well as the limitations of the government. If you look at the private sector, and I'll talk more about the private sector in the ICT space because I think that is something which holds great potential in this area in terms of applying it in the right manner. If you take the IT industry, what has happened in the last 20 years is a miracle by any standards. We've today got a globally recognized industry which is world class. It has grown from zero to $100 billion plus. In fact, it topped $100 billion last year in terms of its turnover. And I still remember in 1992 when I was in the Commerce Ministry, when there was a World Bank study which said this industry may actually grow to $1 billion by 1996, there were gasps of disbelief. And today we are at 100 billion. It's such a powerful tool. It's a meta sector after all. It can actually have impact on every single sector. It can have impact on manufacturing, it can have impact on health, it can have impact on education. You name it and it can effect a radical transformation if it is used in the right way. It has done so in many countries. And the Indian IT industry is actually helping it to happen in other countries. But ironically, not that much of an impact on how it is done within the country. In part, this is because the industry also was focused on the global market. Even today, 80% of the revenues come from the international market. And the focus from a bottom line point of view was always on the dollar revenues and so on. So there was relatively little attention towards the domestic market. Things have changed dramatically. The global economy is in decline in many parts of the world. Opportunities are limited. And margins are getting squeezed. And to add to their woes, there are protectionist tendencies coming up in many countries. So the search for new pastures has compelled a situation where people have to move up the value chain and have to innovate, go into products, do new things in order to continue to grow. Equally, they have to also look at what can be done within the domestic market. And by a happy coincidence, a lot of the innovation and a lot of the product development actually can be better done when you're looking at a domestic market. If you look at a lot of the innovation in ICT which has happened, much of it has happened in the US. It's focused on a global market, it's focused on addressing the global market through the internet. But the US is the anchor market. And therefore, innovation has to be rooted in the reality in which it is occurring. It's extremely difficult to envisage a lot of innovation happening in India, which is actually sorting out problems in some other country. So if you are looking at product development and you are looking at innovation, then the domestic market is the place where it can actually happen. So for a variety of reasons, today, as the Indian IT industry has set itself an aspiration that we want to grow as an industry from $100 billion today to over $300 billion by 2020. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the implications of these numbers, to go from 0 to 100 was a miracle, but to grow from 100 to 300 billion is going to be 10 times as difficult. Though it's only a growth on paper of 3 times, to grow from such a big size 3 times within this short period of 7 years. There have been many studies, many of which have shown that actually this kind of growth will only be possible if you are actually doing new things. As much as 70 to 75% of this growth will come from services and products which simply don't exist today. Which means that we are actually going to see a whole lot of things being done differently. So this is the story on the IT side. On the telecom side, there's an equally interesting development which has happened, and that is that over the last decade or so, a lot of interesting things have happened. And while all the attention may have been focused on some number which starts with 1, 7 and 6 and a lot of zeros, the reality is that we have actually grown to a market which now has as many as 900 million subscribers. And even if you discount the fact that these are only subscribers and SIM cards, there are at least 5 to 600 million people, individuals, who are connected today. Now, in a country of a billion, that effectively means that you have got almost every family on the radar. And what can you now do with that connectivity? It's fine that we like to talk and we're all connected with each other, but there's a lot else that you can do with that. And today the telecom industry is facing a lot of problems. They're facing a lot of problems partly because of the fallout of the spectrum and the scams and all that, and the high cost of spectrum today. They are also facing the problems of a high level of loan. Their debt equity ratios are out of shape, so they're all facing a lot of debt. So they all know that you can't continue to grow. After all, you're already covered more than half the population. So growth is only going to come from data and from services. And that growth has been phenomenal in the last few months. So they need this innovation for them to survive also. And the kind of application of ICT to solve these problems in new ways, to solve old problems in new ways much more cost effectively, is actually going to ride on the telecom infrastructure, and it actually needs to leverage the IT. If you didn't have either of them, then sorry, you can dream on, but nothing is going to happen. We've got all of this, we're sitting on all, it's already there. And on top of it, now the government also has a program, and just at lunchtime, one of the gentlemen here, who is the Health Secretary from Karnataka, and who leads the NRHM program in the state, was asking me when does this project of setting up optical fiber to every single panchayat in the country, when does it get completed, when does it get ready, when can I connect all my PHCs so that we can actually provide a qualitatively different kind of health service to people. That is underway even as we speak, and in the next year or so we expect that that would be completed, which means every single panchayat would be connected, and at the panchayat through Wi-Fi the local connectivity would also become available. Now if you had a billion people who are connected, if you had broadband which went down to the panchayats and you had Wi-Fi at the local level, what are all the things that you could do? How would you do what you are doing today differently to make it more effective, to reach the same scale that we are trying to do today, but to reach the quality which has been achieved only in pockets. Now that brings me to the third part of this triad, which is the civil society organizations and the non-government or not-for-profit organizations, or today the evolution of a new breed of social entrepreneurs who are actually combining social good with business viability, and thereby creating an opportunity not just to do social good but also in the process earn a living, make profits, and I would dare say derive a lot more satisfaction with what they are doing. In the case of a lot of civil society organizations, and I've had occasion to interact with a very large number of civil society organizations in the course of my stay in the IT ministry and to some extent in the telecom as well. And some of them have achieved very remarkable results. And it's extremely impressive, it's very heartening, and you really feel charged when you go there and you see the passion with which people are doing things and how it has made a difference to the lives of people. But then it's in pockets, it's in small pockets. And their challenge is they are able to deliver quality. They have a big challenge when it comes to scaling up. The second thing is, because the social entrepreneurship concept is a recent phenomenon, a lot of these people actually did what they are doing through grant money. Now, I have nothing against grant money, but the problem is that grant money is not necessarily very good in terms of providing an impetus to creating viable business models. So when you are implementing, say, a health scheme or a skill development scheme or some education project, you don't actually have a very strong view, or you don't have a one eye fixed on, is this making sense? If you take education, for example, and this is a question which is constantly battered with, it's all very well to say that, we will, through ICT, will provide high quality education right down to the villagers. The person in the village can get the quality of education that the best school in Delhi provides. Every college student can get access to the best material that an IIT provides. We know it's true. It's not a pipe dream, it's not an exaggeration. But the fact is that all of this does require a certain amount of investment and a certain amount of money. And if you look at the schools, for example, the schools in the villages, and for many of you who work in the field, you know that in many schools there have been huge challenges. A lot of them didn't have buildings or blackboards or chalk. Many of them didn't have schools. I remember when I was a sub-collector, I went to one school in a tribal area. I was working as a tribal project officer for a tribal development agency. This was in my third year of service, and you had to go by car up to a point, by jeep from that point onwards, and then by boat up to the further point, and then by walk by 12 kilometers to reach that village. And when I reached the village, I went to the school and I found, to my pleasant surprise, that the teacher was teaching. But then a little more investigation showed that he was not the teacher who was appointed there. He was a subcontractor whom the teacher said, you do the teaching and I will give you a part of my salary. And he was doing something else. So I was, in all the youthful sort of passion, I said, I am going to suspend him and he must be dismissed and so on. Till some seniors who were also there at that time advised me and counseled me not to be so rash and said, actually he is far more conscientious than many people who simply don't teach at all. He is at least ensured that there are people to teach them. So that was my first sort of, in a sense, grounding on the realities of life and how you have to deal with all of this. So many things which look very good on paper, actually on the ground, there are a lot of challenges. So the point is that, so we know that whether you take the government or you take the private sector or you take the civil society organizations, each of them has strengths which are quite unique. And it's sometimes fashionable for each to look at the other with a certain degree of contempt. The government looks at the civil society organization and says, oh, that's okay, they're just doing 20 schools, and that is not even my, margin of error in my budget. You're better off just pouring it down the Ganga. And if you look at the private sector, then they would say that, all these guys are totally inefficient and they don't know how to scale, and we've been there and done it. Now, I think that it's good to be self-critical, and on that perhaps we score very highly as a nation. But at the same time, I have little respect for anybody who is merely critical without offering a better option. And that is really where today's technologies have matured to a point where now they enable combinations which are simply not possible earlier. You can have configurations to deal with problems like health, education, adult literacy, skill development, and so on, which actually bring together the strengths of the government and the private sector and the civil society organizations using the power of these technologies.